All right, so we are moving on to lesson 3, and today's the first session, so it'll be fairly short, which means we're going to have a short video as well. But let's get started with our warm-up. Okay, our warm-up gives us this rectangular prism here, and it wants us to find the volume of the prism. Again, warm-ups are just intended just as a quick review of things we've been doing. So we know at this point that length times width times height will give us a volume. That's what the V stands for. And we already know what L, W, and H stand for. But if you're given a rectangular prism and there's no measurements shown, you've got to find them out on our own. And luckily, it gives us a little reference point here. It lets us know that everything that we're going to do here is in centimeters. And our final answer will be cubic centimeters. So I'm going to put that there as a visual reminder for my answer. But let's find the 3 measurements. We've got 2 here, 2 here, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here. So there's my 3 measurements for volume. Now, it doesn't matter which one you consider the length, the width, or the height, because any order you multiply these in will get the same exact answer. So let's just jump right into it. All right. When you're multiplying more than 2 numbers, it's probably best to merge or combine a couple of them to make the multiplying a little easier. So let's do 2 times 2 is 4. So now we know 6 times 4 is 24. And we already talked about the fact that this would be in cubic centimeters. So it's really important to put that there because we're being very specific. So if you work in engineering or building, you need to know the exact measurements and what units to actually properly build what you're trying to make. All right. So this starts on page 33. And we start off with this scenario where Becky's using 1-inch cubes to create a model for a small paper gift bag she's making. So looking over here with our reference, we know that every cube there is going to be a cubic inch. So our final answer will be in cubic inches. And we'll do just like we did with our warm-up and come up with our 3 measurements. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 2 here, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 right here. So down below, we're going to have volume equals length times width times height. That's going to mean 4 times 2 times 5. And I just grabbed whatever numbers and just plugged them in because, again, any order will give us the same answer. 4 times 2 is 8. And we know 8 times 5 is 40. And we have cubic inches here for our final answer. So her gift bag should be 40 cubic inches. And let's see if that's true by going to the next page. All right. How can you find the volume of Becky's model without counting each cube? So what they're basically asking is, what are some techniques for us that that we've been using that have made this quicker and not a process where we take everything apart and count it cube by cube? The easiest way to do it is to find how many cubes are per layer. So a layer, if you look at that picture, is basically 5 cubes by 2 cubes, and that's 10 cubes. And then you see how many layers are stacked on top of each other in our model, and then there's 4 layers. And you guys know at this point, so this would mean we have 4 times 10 equals 40 cubic inches. So that's the way we've been doing it for a while. But what we're going to focus on next is something called a base layer, and we'll kind of break it down where it's basically a second way to find volume. Still get the same answer, but it's basically one less step. Might make this go a little quicker. All right, Becky finished the gift bag shown below. You can find the formula with the formula using the letters L, W, and H to represent length, width, and height. So just, again, notice that it's got height right here in blue, and then it's got length and width here in red. And again, don't get caught up on the specifics. They're just for the sake of this lesson is just kind of sticking one with each. The bottom of a rectangular prism is called its base. the letter B is used to represent the area of the base. So the base, if you could circle this little area here, that's going to be our base layer. And that's important to talk about because a base of something, any building, any structure, is going to be that very first layer. So we're going to do the same thing when we try to find volume. Okay, it says write an equation using the area of the base to find the bag's volume, V, then complete the formula with a letter. We know the volume is 40. We've already done that a couple of times, so we know that's true. Here it's got B in red. It wants to know what's the base layer. So what we're going to have to do is do this 5 times 2, and that gives us 10. And 10 times the height, or 4, would give us 40, and that 4 represents H. We're basically taking the numbers and we're working backwards to what we're used to doing to find out which represents what. But use the letters shown in the formula below to help complete another equation for the volume of the bag, this more traditional one. So the volume is 40. The length is 5. The width is 2. And then the height is 4. And then we know that that's length times width times height. So again, all this is doing is saying, hey, this is how we find these letters and use these letters for the 2 volume formulas. So you can find volume this way, or you can find volume this way. You still are going to get 40 as your answer for both. So it's just a matter of your preference. And how are the 2 volume formulas you wrote alike, and how are they different? The first line, you can write how they're alike. They both use multiplication. And how they're different, I'm just going to, again, write just really quick, easy notes. One of them has a base layer, and one of them does not. So, and that would be volume equals base times height. That's the one that would be doing it for that. All right, so again, quick lesson here for that. So let's get right to what your assignment is today for your classwork, or if you're home for homework. More reflex. I think it's still important to master your multiplication facts before we move on. Our next lesson is actually going to be starting to do 2-digit multiplication. So the more practice we get in with single-digit multiplication, the better.